In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up SharePoint profile imports with the VIS Management Console. The first thing we need to do is pull up the SharePoint Central Administration application and take a look at a few things. So we're going to first navigate over to Manage Service Applications, and we're going to make sure that we have a User Profile Service application created. If you don't, you can create a new one over here by clicking on New and just filling in the basic information. From this profile service, we're going to take a look at some of the permissions for it. So we're going to highlight the application, and we're going to first of all we're going to take a look at the administrator section. Now you want to make sure that the user that we're going to use to update the profiles have full control to it. So we're going to use the administrator account here, and that looks like that's set up correctly. The other thing we want to check is over on the permissions button. We want to make sure that the same thing here, that the administrator account has full control to make these the connection. Okay. After we do that, we want to go ahead and open up the profile service and take a look at some of our user profiles we have out there. So if we come up, if a shortcut with Federated Trust, if you just type an I, you can pull up all your users, but I don't have that many in here, so it's pretty easy for me to pull up. You can see in here that Sam Sales has logged in once before, and therefore he got a generic profile account out there. But if we were to take a look at Sam, you'll notice that his information is pretty blank, other than the account name and the preferred name, which defaults to the account he logged in as. Everything else is blank here. What we're going to do is we're going to actually populate this information with a profile import from a compliance policy action in the management console. So we're going to go ahead and launch the management console and pull up the compliance policy actions, and then we're going to create a new one. Add compliance policy action, and we're going to just give this test profile import. You can call it whatever you'd like to, and just for this purpose we're going to go ahead and just pick out Sam account name equals sam.sales, and then in our search base we'll search everything, and our search scope subtree, and we'll go ahead and test that filter. And of course our user did come back, so I typed everything right. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually add an action to this compliance policy action, and in the action drop down box we're going to pick SharePoint 2010 profile import. You want to make sure that you're using this one and not the one above. There are differences. The 2010 one you can actually run from the management console as well as from the automated launcher tool, and it uses the web services within SharePoint. The other one uses the SharePoint APIs and must run on the SharePoint server itself. So this is the newer method that most people are using today. So we're going to go ahead and configure that. And we want to input our central admin site, which is the website we're going to connect to update the profiles. We're going to enter in our administrator account and a password for that account, our claim prefix, and I'll show you where we get that in a minute, and our trusted provider prefix, and I'll show you where we get that as well. So back over in SharePoint, if I go to log in, let's try to log in here. And okay, it looks like I'm already logged in. It looks like I'm logged in as my generic SAM user. So if I take a look at his profile settings, this is his generic information I showed you in the profile store. You'll notice that the claim prefix is here, the I:05.T in my case. Now, yours is probably going to be different, so you need to make sure that you copy this value over there. The other field I set was the trusted provider we set up, and that's this guy here. So back over here, these are those two values that are configured. The next field is the identity claim that you set up for your SharePoint system. Now, this could be the email address, it could be the Windows account name, it could also be perhaps the user principal name. Whatever you configured your system as. In my case, it's email. If you choose a Windows account name and your user accounts are prefixed with a domain, then you want to make sure that this checkbox is unchecked. When it's unchecked, we actually take the value found here, which could be, say, Sam account name, and we prepend it with the domain /. In that case, you want to make sure that your management console and launcher console actually have the proper mappings, domain section mappings, as I do here. And this is all you need to do. And this is pretty standard throughout most of our products. Domain optimal IDM, domain SQL, domain VIS, and these map to a given search space within the product. Okay, so back in here, I think we're all set. These are the attributes now from VIS I'm going to be pulling, and the profile names that I'm going to be syncing the data into. So to determine what those names are, we come back into the profile tool and look at manage user properties. We can now take a look at all of the attributes over here. So we'll take a look at the first name, and if we open it up, the value you want is the very first one in the list. That's the value that we want to map to. So if you want to map something to the first name, in this case I'm bringing given name to first name, that's the value I want to use. The last checkbox just says if a value exists in SharePoint, do you want to override it or not? And most of the time everyone wants to choose yes there. So we're going to save here, and the tricky part is you want to make sure you go save, save, save. So we're going to save this, and then we're going to save the actual compliance policy action. And then we're going to click on our new action we just created and process it. And you're going to notice that the first time you run this, if the SharePoint web services have not been used recently, it may take 10, 20, maybe even 30 seconds to kick that off. In my case, you'll notice I've run it recently, so it only took about a second to connect and sync that profile over there. So if we go back over to our profile store, what happened, you will notice that when I search for my user now, or I'll cheat and type Sam Sales is there again, but when I look at his data, he has data out there now because we synced it over from that compliance policy action. We even synced in the preferred name, which is the one that's going to show up when he logs into the system, Sam Sales. But first thing I want to note that you'll notice here, if I refresh his screen, he still has the ugly username out here. That's because the profile sync job inside of SharePoint has not run yet. Now if you give it enough time, it will run,